I truly, truly believe from experience that if you believe in your purpose, the profit will follow. Because if you understand the why you are here and the who you are serving, the what doesn't matter. The what will develop because you're going to evolve as an organization. That was a different type of fundraising that was different to our head of fundraising expertise. But she was willing to upskill herself and say, I care more about the organization than my niche. So I'm going to expand my skills and I'm going to expand what this team can do. And I will take the team with me. And all of a sudden, we went from almost having to close our doors in 2019 to 2022, we're sitting on 630% growth. The donor came back and said, Cara, we love what the organization is doing. We love your team. We are passionate about what your team is doing. And we are going to invest in you guys for 3 years. They signed a contract worth over 117 million rand. That is the largest donation we have ever secured. It completely changed the trajectory of our organization now for the next 3 years.
Welcome back to the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. My name's Rob Woods, and this is the show for fundraisers who want ideas and maybe a dose of inspiration to help you raise more money and really enjoy your job. And this is episode 176. This time, I'm talking to a wonderful fundraising leader called Cara Jean Petersen. Cara Jean is CEO of Feenix, which is spelled Feenix. It's a not-for-profit organisation in South Africa that helps students to fundraise successfully, as well as connecting funders to students they wish to support. I met Cara Jean at the International Fundraising Congress, where she was sharing insights she's gained over the last 7 years at the charity. In that time, Feenix has faced numerous challenges, and yet it's still achieved truly extraordinary growth, to the extent that it's one of the examples that Alan Clayton shares in his excellent book, Great Fundraising Organisations. I found talking to Cara Jean both refreshing and inspiring, and I hope you enjoy this story as much as I did. Just before I get started, I want to give a quick shout out to a few of the wonderful people I met at the Understanding Philanthropy Conference at the University of Kent. In particular, thank you for saying hello and sharing such lovely feedback about this podcast. So thank you to Joanna Roberts, to Jemima Chana, and to our ever generous host on the day, Dr. Beth Breeze. And thanks too to everyone who kindly spreads the word about what we do at Bright Spot, including Holly Broadley, Hannah Langford, Paola Garcia-Joliet, Natasha Phillips, and Max Newton. I know there are so many more of you. Please just know that I really appreciate your support. Hello, Cara Jean. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
Well, so thank you so much for making time in your very busy week. So the story is, a few months ago, I went to the International Fundraising Congress and I went to a bunch of excellent sessions, but I especially enjoyed the one that you presented alongside Howard Lake and Connor Seaton. And I so enjoyed the story you told. And right there and then I came up to you and asked you if you would come and share it again for our podcast listeners. So thank you ever so much for saying yes and making time to do it. In terms of setting up the context, you're now the chief exec of Feenix, but I think originally you joined in a different role.
Yes, so it's been quite a journey with Feenix. So originally I joined back in 2018. Gosh, I can't believe it's been almost 7 years, or just over 7 years. So I joined as the head of their student programs. And then I was in the kind of oversaw the student department and all the programs, all the relationships with the universities. And then I was actually groomed into the CEO role, which I've now been in for the last couple years. So quite a transition. And I think for many, quite a surprise in terms of leapfrogging to go from a head of a department all the way to CEO. But I think when you really believe in the why of the organization, and because of my natural curiosity, I wanted to know all the facets of the business, and I got to work really closely with all the departments and teams. So, yeah, it made sense in terms of my mentorship journey and where we wanted to take Feenix. So lots of learnings and insights, which I'm sure we'll unpack today. But yes, it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, it sure has. And before I went to that session, I hadn't heard of Feenix. So for people listening out there who are not based in South Africa or anyway have not heard of it, really top line, what is Feenix?
So Feenix, we are the only public benefit organization in South Africa where we specialize both in crowdfunding on a digital platform for students in the tertiary education space, and we also administer bursaries for students with some of our corporate partners. So other organizations, they'll either do just crowdfunding or they'll just do bursary administration, but we do both. For those who know a bit about the South African context, education is not affordable here in South Africa for the masses. And so for us, it was really about how do we respond to the movement, how do we respond to the call and be a part of the solution rather than the problem. And that was how Feenix was birthed. It was actually birthed out of a Fees Must Fall movement, which was mass protests across the country around 2015, 2016, and we were birthed as one of the solutions, and we've been running ever since, and just, helping more and more students get education and get work, gainful work, and really just make a difference in our nation's prosperity.
Yes, it's a wonderful organisation, and a key bit of what you just said is helping more and more students get access to education, and I guess that's the point. A reason why you were invited to share this example at the IFC, or maybe a reason why you applied to share it, is because of the growth. Obviously, growth in fundraising income, but crucially, fundraising income in order to help ever more students. And it is a wonderful success story to the extent that it has rightfully its place within Alan Clayton's wonderful book, Great Fundraising Organizations. And top line, if anyone's not heard my other episode talking to Alan about that book, a lot of the idea of the book is to study organizations, not just ones which keep going or increase income by 5% per year, but where there's wonderful explosive growth, for instance, across at least a 5-year period. And this is true of Feenix, and that's why Alan talks about Feenix and its growth and its approach, its strategy and its culture, and the shift that you made. He talks about it in that book. So anyway, if any of our listeners haven't heard that episode with Alan, I really recommend they go and find it. But in terms of your story, I would love for our listeners to get your sense of how that came about. Clearly, it wasn't all you. The whole point is it's a wonderful team effort. But if you report to us your observations of how it occurred.
In terms of our journey, so I think what was unique about my journey is that I joined from a programmatic point of view. So I came in, I was there to understand the students who is our beneficiary, understand the organization, really believed in the why and the cause because it linked to my personal story. So I also came from financial circumstances where my mother had 4 kids. She couldn't afford to send all of us to university. And so it was my grandpa in the line with me for, hours and hours with financial aid. I had to rely on my community to really make donations and come together. And so I really believed in what Feenix was doing, where you leverage the power of a community to really bring about change. So I came in with, I was trained up in psychology. I understood my background was in youth development programs. So I really wanted to bring to the table, how do we develop programs that are really going to support the students and make sure that this journey with us is an impactful one. So that was my perspective. Then you encounter fundraising. And fundraising is about how do you pitch the beneficiary to the donor. And so we had massive debates around the leadership table. So it was forever the head of fundraising and myself as the head of programs at odds. So we would have massive debates at the table. And I remember there was this one day we were busy debating to say, we just felt as the student team that our donors were just being completely ridiculous and they were being unrealistic with their expectations. They wanted students to submit massive amounts of documentation in short spans of time, but our students are writing exams. They wanted to support students from really under-resourced communities, but they expected these students to be A students. I'm like, how do you expect a student to be an A student and they can't even afford their books? Tell me that. The math is not mathing. So I would come with all of these these complaints, these heartfelt complaints and advocating for my students and fundraising. In essence, they were like, do you want the money or not? This is what the donor is asking for. Do you want it or not? And the funniest thing is myself and the head of fundraising got on so well. Like we were really good, really, really good colleagues, friends, really close. And so the rest of the team would be holding their breath in the meeting rooms. And then we would just walk out and go get an orange juice because it's not personal, it's just uncomfortable. And I feel like because we both cared so much about the organization, it was important that we were willing to hash things out. So that was one big learning that I learned quite early on in my career with Feenix, is that you need to care enough about the organization and the beneficiaries to actually have uncomfortable conversations with your team and hash it out to the point where you're both going to say, how best do we serve donors and do we serve the beneficiary? So one of the things that we came to, we said, you know what, we need to share experience and we need to share perspective. So our head of fundraising started coming with me into meetings with donors and students, and I started going with her into meetings with donors. And so I was able to find out, oh, actually donors also have bosses to report to, and donors have also been scammed before, and donors also need to make sure that this is a real student, that they can get the reports to their bosses, that they can also look good, they can account for every cent spent. And in fact, they have predictable timelines that we can work around. So it's not crisis mode every time they need a document. And then what happened was quite a beautiful thing in one of the donor meetings that I sat in. Our head of fundraising was discussing with a donor of them coming on board, and they also again wanted the A students, but students that came from complete poverty. So I said to them, I said, let me tell you about Ntombi. Ntombi is one of the students that I spent time with on campus. She was not an A student. She fundraised on Facebook just enough for her registration fee to get into university. Then another donor supported her. She is now an A student. She is now on the Dean's Merit list. She is now busy with her master's in engineering because someone took a chance on her first, and she became that once she was connected to the resources. All of a sudden, the donor's like, you know what? I wasn't an A student either. And look at me now. Great. I'm on board. So it really was, I think myself and the head of fundraising, we had to come to the place where fundraising and programs not only respected what each other did, but also was willing to understand what each other did and who they were serving and sharing those learnings. And then we became each other's advocates, and we became an extension of each other's teams. And so I think from me being in that role, just from, head of programs and not even yet, a fundraising CEO, that was, I think, something that really, really stood out for me.
Wonderful examples of how that shift in perspective really helped. I wonder if there was a particular moment where you felt things started to shift. And in the book, Alan talks about this idea of two businesses, one mission. And as long as charities try to make one mission fit with just one way of working, one culture, one set of messages, there will forever be compromise, there will forever be stress, and whatever the messaging we choose will forever become bland, beige or vanilla. And it sounded to me like recognizing this notion of course, we speak slightly different languages to different audiences, but because of that, we can actually work with it. I wonder if you could talk to how you shifted in that direction.
Yes, so the orange juice moment definitely was the catalyst, I think, for that change. And one of the things that I think started to shift the perspective of the organization was our head of fundraising led a great fundraising organization masterclass. So she was able to get in touch with Alan. She was able to get the recording of his masterclass. We went through it as a full team, as in from the administrator to the fundraiser. Everyone in the organization participated in this masterclass to really understand that notion of this is the cause of the organization. We all have a role to play, and we can't keep trying to speak one language because we're speaking to different people. And that was where that notion is of one mission but two businesses. One of the businesses for us was our students, and the other business was the donors. And they required different types of language. They required communication on different platforms. So from then, when we had that better understanding, there were two things that we started to implement. The one was that we said, you know what, let's look at our platforms and let's see where our students are mostly, and let's customize our communication for them on those platforms, and where are our donors mostly, and let's customize our communication for our donors there. Yes, students are also on LinkedIn, but mostly it's for donors. Yes, donors are Instagram, but it's mostly for students. So we needed to start finding out whose space do we need to respect more, or where is the communications more weighted. So that was one thing. The other thing was that we needed, in order for this one mission, two businesses to work, we needed to understand each business. So that's where we started saying fundraising needed to understand student advancement, student advancement needed to understand fundraising. So what we also did is we created mini committees or task teams within the organization that straddled between the two to make sure there wasn't a disconnect and the messaging wasn't watered down. So we developed this thing as a small example. We took one of our coordinators from student advancement, one from fundraising, and one from marketing. They became their little task team. And we said, okay, guys, students need to also fundraise. It's not just us fundraising for them. It's them crowdfunding and fundraising for themselves. But how do we do this? How do we bridge the gap? So they came up with this thing called the First 100 Guide. And it was basically fundraising best practices on how to raise your first 100 Rand. And then to take that and just keep doing it again and again and again. And all of a sudden, the team burst through with innovation and energy and excitement because they did it together, but they were serving both donors because donors loved seeing students fundraise for themselves. They wanted to add to those efforts. They wanted to be a part of it. It also helped combat a stigma that we have in our country that students are lazy and entitled. And they just want handouts because of apartheid. And there's all of these things politically in our country that we need to navigate, and it's very sensitive. But we needed to combat to say, no, these students are not looking for handouts. They are willing to be brave and put their stories out there. They are asking for you to invest in them. And so we changed that narrative, but we needed the students to actually do their part. And so we were serving now both the students as one business and serving our donors as the other. So we started doing collabs between the two, and I think that's what really moved it forward. But the second shift happened when we adopted the belief that everyone is a fundraiser. And that was a very difficult one because there were a lot of people that were like, I'm not a fundraiser. In fact, I was one of those people. I was like, I am not a fundraiser. I am a student manager. I am not doing fundraising. I'm not pitching to donors. That's not my vibe. And I would fight with our head of fundraising. And it took a long time for her to really get buy-in from everyone with support from our CEOs. I think having leadership buy-in is very, very important. But once we really understood that, guys, if you believe in the cause and you are willing to pitch the cause, you're a fundraiser for that cause. And it's just about bringing your skills to the table. So we said, okay, fine. It's one thing to say everyone's a fundraiser. It's another thing to actually live it out. So we started living it out through our culture and through our values and through our doables. So as an organization and as team members, what are you doing on a daily basis that buys into this belief? So one of the things is a part of everyone's professional development plans was fundraising upskilling. So every year, our team actually blocks out those 3 days when there's the International Fundraising Congress. We get an online ticket and we say to all of our stakeholders, our team is doing upskilling for 3 days. We will not be online and everyone attends the conference. And after that, we share our learnings and insights on how are we going to be better fundraisers and how are we going to be a better fundraising organization. And you upskilling your people, you keeping them engaged, you keeping the buy-in aligned. And I think having that kind of intentionality is really what shifted things for us. And what we saw was in terms of our growth, I mean, it will come to also some realities and some of our nosedives, but from 2017 to 2022, our income grew by 630%. And that's also why we ended up being in Alan's book, was because that growth was crazy and definitely unexpected, but we stuck to the principles and we really stuck to the basics. We believed in it wholeheartedly. We built in team stability, team knowledge. And I think that is what really helped us grow. And we were willing to be agile and pivot because crowdfunding wasn't paying all of the bills. At one point, we were in the red and we were like, what are we going to do now? And between our head of fundraising and our CEO, they said, are we going to stick to what we think is the only way to fundraise, or are we going to actually leverage other streams of income, which in South Africa is we have government policies where all companies have to spend a certain percentage of their profit on education. So we could work with our corporate partners for their grants and their CSI projects to go towards education of our students. And that was a different type of fundraising that was different to our head of fundraising expertise. But she was willing to upskill herself and say, I care more about the organization than my niche. So I'm going to expand my skills and I'm going to expand what this team can do. And I will take the team with me. And all of a sudden, we went from almost having to close our doors in 2019 to 2022, we're sitting on 630% growth.
Hey there, it's Rob, and I wanted to quickly let you know about our 2 flagship training programs. That's the Major Gifts Mastery Program and the Corporate Partnerships Mastery Program, to give you a sense of the difference they can make. Here's a really quick bit of feedback we received from Asiya Parek, who took part in our most recent Corporate Mastery Program.
This is my first corporate fundraising position. I've never corporate fundraised before. I rely quite heavily on the things that Rob taught. Since being on the programme, the charity has managed to turn over 10 partnerships. We started off with 1. While I was on the course with Rob, that 1 turned into 6, and now it's turned into 10. For the charity, the partnerships are worth around £10,000 each, and at 10, we have a total of £100,000 coming in. I would really, really recommend the programme. Absolutely do it. It's worth every penny, and I'm really, really grateful for having been on it.
Now, if you're listening to this in the first week of May and you've been meaning to join one of these programs, I need to let you know that the deadline for Corporate Partnerships Mastery and Major Gifts Mastery 2025 is the close of play on the 7th of May. That's the 7th of May. So if you need to grow high-value fundraising income like Asiya did, and you want to grab one of the last couple of places before we close, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk/services. It's so inspiring to hear you talk about these various shifts of co-working and seeing the other side's point of view and so on, and the practical ways it's built into the culture now. I think lots and lots of charities try to do some of these things. They would like to, and they make a bit of progress, 2 steps forward and then 1 step back and so on. And I think in your talk the other day, you said actually a major reason we did manage to make these shifts and have sustained them is alignment about why we're here. And you've mentioned a couple of times your why, but I wonder if you could take us back to how quite deliberately that quote clarifying moment was achieved and the difference it's made.
Going back to 2019, which I call the red line moment, where we really thought that we might not be able to pay all of our bills and really needed to pivot the business. I think one of the things that happened was, while on a leadership level, we had decided that we weren't just going to do digital crowdfunding anymore, and we were going to start expanding into corporate fundraising. The team wasn't fully along, and the team got quite confused. We're like, so what are we then? Are we still a crowdfunding platform? Is that how we describe ourselves? Are we now a bursary program? Is that how? So the team had lost sense of what is the why and who are we as a business. And so we really needed to take a step back. And what we did is we actually brought in an external researcher to just speak to our students, the parents, and say, let's actually just understand fully who it is that you're serving and even how they understand who you are. So spending some time to take a step back, have a pause moment, do the research, come through and share those insights and those real stories really gave us an opportunity to speak from that. And what we realized when we looked at our website even, the website kept speaking about the how. And because the how kept changing, we kept losing our identity and forgetting who we are. What we needed to shift in our communication from a website visual perspective, but even just from a narrative, is it's not about the how, it's about the why. Because if you understand the why you are here and the who you are serving, the what doesn't matter. The what will develop because you're going to evolve as an organization. So what we came to as a team, we said, you know what, our why is that we believe access to education should not be dependent on wealth. That's it. And however we make access to education possible, that is our how. And that's fine. That can change. So maybe we do it through crowdfunding. Maybe we do it through corporate fundraising. Maybe we do it through both. Maybe we send something to the moon and somehow that generates an income and that also pays for our students. Great. At the end of the day, it's about, we believe access to education should not be dependent on wealth. So how about getting the wealth, connecting our students to it, and now making it possible? And so that really shifted and gave that clarifying moment. And once the team was let off the hook that it wasn't about the how all the time, it was about the why, they could all of a sudden spread their wings and flex more. And that stayed our North Star throughout our development and throughout our evolution. And I think one of the things that it really helped us through during 2023, one of the worst years of my life, which I now call the nosedive, we were going through a typical life cycle change within the organization where we went through tremendous growth, But now we hit this mark where there was a lot of change happening all at the same time. We had almost 50% staff turnover because the world had changed again. People could start looking for other jobs. There was more job security, but also corporate organizations or companies were holding on to a lot of their finances because they were realigning their impact strategies. They wanted to make sure that it aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so all of a sudden, funds that were usually flowing within our organization now was taking a pause. And we went from 2022, where we had raised 48 million rand for the year, to now at the end of 2023, we had only raised 14 million. So the team was devastated. We were at a place of burnout. We felt we had worked harder than we had ever worked before. And yet the rand value was just not reflecting that effort. And we needed to decide, is our why strong enough? Does the why still make us cry? That's one of the sayings that we also have adopted, is if the why still makes you cry, you know you'll stick it out. And so we really needed to have a reflective moment at the end of 2023 and say, are we willing to still believe in the why? Do we still believe that access to education should not be dependent on wealth and that we are best positioned to make that happen? And if so, if we believe that our purpose is strong enough and that profit will follow, let's continue with our best practices. Let's pivot. Let's improve where we can, but let's keep going. And I'm not going to lie, 2024, the first 6 months was still really rough. And there was a bit of PTSD happening. But there was this beautiful moment where a donor came on board. And it was the biggest donation we have ever received in the entire 7 years of Feenix's existence. I had been working on that relationship for 12 months. Going for coffee, sending them our insights reports, popping in on email, popping in on WhatsApp. And I'm like, I wonder if this is ever going to work. Is our organization really worth investing in? I was even starting to doubt it, but I said, you know what? No. I have my own personal story. I believe in it. The team believes in it. We're going to stick it out. The donor came back and said, Cara, we love what the organization is doing. We love your team. We are passionate about what your team is doing. And we are going to invest in you guys for 3 years. They signed a contract worth over 117 million rand. That is the largest donation we have ever secured. It completely changed the trajectory of our organization now for the next 3 years. In 2024, we had ended the year off with raising double what we had raised the previous year. And this year, we're projecting to double that again. And it was because we stuck out the why, we stuck to it, we stuck out the hard bits, we had the uncomfortable conversations. But I truly, truly believe from experience that if you believe in your purpose, the profit will follow. But you really need to believe in the purpose.
That's an amazing story, because we all have moments when it does get that hard. And it's so interesting to know that the thing that gets you through is tuning into the why. It reminds me of an excellent TED talk by Simon Sinek called Start With Why, and he cites various very successful organizations and people who've overcome the odds and gone from underdog to then, massive success because they were more tuned into their why in a more visceral sense than the usually better resourced competitors. I guess in terms of practical things you could share, what are some insights and or some practical steps people could do?
So I think the first thing I would recommend for any leader, team leader of the organization is recruit based on the why. Because at the end of the day, it's the people that are going to make the organization successful or not. And for anyone that works in a nonprofit, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the passion and the heart behind it. And there's going to be times where someone needs to go outside of that scope of work. They're going to have to pull extra hours. They're going to have to do extra work that's maybe not on the initial function. But if they really believe in the why, they'll be willing to step in the gap, for those moments, because they see the ultimate vision and the why, and they're committed to that. So I think that was one of the biggest lessons over my career with Feenix and just in general, is make sure that in your recruitment process, you're recruiting based on buy into the why of the organization. And then the second for me would be, you need to believe in the purpose first, and trust that the profit will follow. Also be okay to have conversations with your team, your fundraising team, without the pressure of the numbers. just get a sense of how are they, where are they at, are they feeling discouraged? If they're having a crap day, allow them to have a crap day, because fundraising is hard. You have to deal with 9 rejections to get 1 yes. So let them feel their feelings, but then make sure that you've been intentional about keeping them encouraged. And then I really believe that as a fundraising organization, if you want to be a great fundraising organization, you need to believe that everyone's a fundraiser. When I was appointed as CEO, I was very resistant to being a fundraising CEO. I was like, no, we have a whole fundraising team and student advancement is on board and the students are fundraisers. Like, I shouldn't be the one, yes, from a PR perspective or from a service provider relationships or our core sponsors, but to always be out on the road. But I realized that I needed to also buy in and believe in what I believed as a manager. I needed to carry that all the way through. And even though I had a lot more legal work and financial work and all the other boring paperwork that a CEO needs to do, I still needed to be out there fundraising. I still needed to be there with the beneficiaries and with the donors, because that's just what our organization is about. So really, when we say everyone is a fundraiser, be intentional about investing in teams' fundraising skills, be intentional about gathering people together and putting joint collaboration projects in place for them to act out those fundraising skills and encourage one another. And then I think lastly, it's just a very practical thing for me is be willing to hash it out. And remember that it's not personal, it's just uncomfortable. You won't always get along. You won't always think that the direction is the right direction. But if you care enough about the organization and your team, be willing to voice your opinion in a respectful manner, hash it out, and know that when you leave that room, you leave it united and you leave it bought in, and you are going to carry out the decision. That's why I call it the orange juice moment, is when you leave the room, be ready to grab an orange juice with your colleagues and be like, cool, we're ready to get down and dirty and we're going to do this thing. We want to make both audiences of the business feel special. We want our students to feel special. We want our donors to feel special. They are made to feel special in different ways, and the language they understand is different. So you can't have one blanket approach. It just won't work. You'll water down your messaging and you won't hit anyone. The spray and pray thing does not work. There's enough data to know that it does not work. For us, what we had to decide on is we needed to decide on certain commonalities and principles. So we know that across both donor and student communication, storytelling is important. So we wanted to be able to mix a bit of quantitative data because we want to make data-informed decisions and we think facts are important. Students and donors love little snippets, little sneak peeks in, studies we've been running and certain stats on them and how they're doing, but also the qualitative stuff. So the real personal stories about one-on-one experiences and how someone has been challenged, how someone has triumphed, and following them through their journey. So that hit on both marks. How we tell it, the language, the lingo, yes, that can be changed. But as Feenix, as an organization, for us, we are people-centered and we believe in the power of storytelling. And that was a commonality and a standard principle we could apply for both businesses to make sure that it stuck within one vision and one tone and one personality. Because we don't have a split personality. That's the other thing. You can't say, because we're two businesses, we have a split personality. No, you need one personality. You just need to customize your approach with the two different people you're speaking to. This is an entire team thing. You need to involve your whole organization, from the implementers, the people who are doing the face-to-face time with who you're serving, all the way through to leadership. You need everyone involved to say, do we really understand who we are serving? How do they speak? What are they interested in? How do we address that? How do we support it? How do we make them feel special? And then decide, how do we customize those approaches that suit the one business and a little bit of a different way that suits the other, but we aren't losing our personality or our tone within it.
That is super helpful for one of the great challenges many charities face. Time has run away with us, Cara. So much great insight there and examples to bring it to life. I really appreciate it. I think it's wonderful what Feenix continues to do. Thank you ever so much for coming and sharing that story. And I look forward to catching up with you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Oh, thanks so much, Rob.
Well, I hope you found Cara Jean's insights helpful. As we always do, we'll put a summary in the episode notes on the podcast section of our Bright Spot website. If you've not already subscribed to our show, please do click the button now. Straight away, you'll get access through your phone to dozens more examples and tips to help you with your fundraising and your leadership. I'm especially excited about some new stories I've been recording recently and that I'm going to be sharing in the next few weeks. So please don't miss out on the chance to receive those as soon as we release them. Now, if you find this podcast, my books, or our Breakfast Club helpful, just think how much difference it would make if we could go into any of these techniques at a deeper level and with your whole team. One of our favourite things to do is to create a bespoke training day to help your whole team learn powerful techniques and grow fundraising results. For instance, I am super proud of how effective our famous Influencing Donors and Supporters course is for any fundraising team. To find out more or to request a chat, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk/services. Thank you as always for supporting our show, either by listening or indeed by sharing it with your friends or your team or on LinkedIn. Believe me, your help makes such a difference to me when I'm trying to somehow carve out time to create a new episode. Please do let us know what you think. Cara Jean and I are both easy to find on LinkedIn. Good luck with your fundraising today, and I look forward to sharing another encouraging story with you very soon.